This is Show Up as a Leader, a show from PeopleForward Network, helping you maximize your positive impact on the world by becoming your best, fully authentic self.
Hey everyone, it's Rosie. I know I say this about a lot of episodes, but I am deadly serious. This is going to be one of those you will want a pen and a paper or to have the notes function on your phone ready. However you take notes, if you are listening to this while you're driving or you're out and about, you're going to want to come back and listen to it again because I had the most amazing conversation with Dr. Marie-Helene Pelletier, or she goes by MH, and she is a resilience expert. And we've had other guests on the show who also talk about resilience, and they've all been fabulous. But what I really, really love about this conversation is she has a book called The Resilience Plan, and she talks about how we get resilience away from being this abstract concept, good idea, a personality trait, and it's all about coming back in the face of adversity to it being a proactive, tactical, tangible way that we can show up as our best individually, collectively on a team. Just we have so many good nuggets. So she talks about components that should be in a resilience plan, and we talk about what those look like individually, as well as then how do you bring those onto a team. She's got an amazing example of how we proactively address challenging situations and look at resilience on a team. You're going to want to listen for that. I know I took notes and I'm going to start using that with my clients as well as on our own team. We talk about why you want to be weary of being somebody else's rock or having someone else be your rock. So we don't want to be what she calls a rock or a wreck. You're going to want to listen for that. She also talks about what are short actions we can take on a daily basis to have our resiliency work out. So everything in this conversation is super actionable, tangible, things you can do right now for yourself, but then things you can also bring to your team. I just think there's so much richness in this conversation, and I would love to hear what you're taking away from this. Take a listen. All right, Marie-Helene, I'm so excited to have this long overdue conversation with you.
Very excited to be here finally as well, Rosie.
You're like, what are you talking about? Because we've tried to schedule this several times, and it's very ironic that we're finally here because we're going to talk about resiliency today. And so I just think, yep, here we go. This is the world just presenting us lessons. And so we're going to dive in because let's just be honest. We know that our world is like always challenging to some degree, but it just feels like a lot harder in recent years than perhaps it needs to be. And we hear so much about resiliency and mindset and all of this stuff. And you have a very practical way of looking at it. Because I think sometimes people latch onto the conceptual idea of what they think resiliency is, but there's some practicality of what does it actually mean and what does that look like tangibly to go from idea to actual behaviors. And so that's why I'm just really, really excited to have this conversation with you. Everyone listening, you want to get her book, The Resilience Plan, which we're going to be linking in the show notes as well. And so here's what I want to start out with if you're game. So one of the things I love about what you do, because I'm all about we've got to move from theory to practice. Or what is the point? We got to get out of our head and we got to get into action. And you talk about that there's a lot of misconceptions about resiliency and that it's not a personality trait, but it's really about a strategy and some decisions. Tell me how you got to this point. You have a really great story that just kicks all this work off that I think is so illustrative of the conversation we're going to have today.
Yes. And I would say there's a number of stories and signs that got me there. But one of them is actually not from the workplace, even though it applies to the workplace. It actually comes from one of my mountaineering adventures. So do a fair bit of mountaineering with my husband, have been doing this for years in various countries, the whole thing. And at some point, and you can get the full details of the full story in the book, but in a nutshell, what happened is we had set out to do an 8-day traverse in the mountains. So go in somewhere, get out 8 days later. But halfway through, we had to actually turn around because I was dealing with severe dehydration, which means at the end of the overall trip, we had to cross a river that we had initially crossed successfully, but this time the same river technically, was in fact much bigger because it had been 8 more days of snow melting. So it was actually not almost the same river. It was way more tumultuous. And when we got there, we did not do any of the things that usually we do that keeps us safe. We did not work together. We did not collaborate. We did not communicate. I did not accept help. And in the end, it actually put both of our safety at risk. And these life moments, I always take a second when I say this, because truly it was a moment for me. But these situations where you literally, in my case, almost die, can really bring a lesson. And for me, it was this lesson of, okay, wait a second. The biggest difference between day 1 and day 8 in this situation was not actually the river. The river was bigger, but the even bigger difference is how we approached it the second time. And then I thought, well, in the workplace, the same thing happens. When we're at the equivalent of day 1, we go through rivers, challenges, things, and we're fine. It works. We have energy. We have all the protective factors around us. And then when we are at risk is the equivalent of day 8, where we have all these demands coming in, often not only at work, but in personal life, all at the same time. And then we just let go of all the things that would have protected us, protective factors, structures, relationships, all kinds of things in our context. We just put our head down, trying to just get through everything. And that's when we're most at risk. And so, so that was one of my personal learnings on, okay, need to take a changing context into account, need to be strategic.
I love one that, you're right. All of these moments that are challenging or crossroads, and they really are moments that they can teach us something. And I think most of us intuitively know we learn the most from those situations that challenge us the most versus the ones that go well, even though at the time they suck.
They sure do. Yes.
They do. But they are really great teachers. What I really appreciate about what you just shared is, yeah, the river's different. Or you think on the workplace, like, yeah, there are some new variables, or there's some things, or there's some new financial strain and pressure, or market pressures, or whatever it might be from a workplace standpoint or a personal standpoint. But with all of those, like you said, the difference is when we let the plan, when we let the structures, when we let the guideposts that allow us to show up effectively go out the window, or we're not caring for them, or we don't have deliberate practices to use them to guide us through bigger waters, choppier waters, whatnot, that's where we struggle more than we need to. And I think I just love that emphasis, because what it brings up for me on so many different levels. But if I just think organizationally, and even right now in these tumultuous times, how often do you have organizations that maybe they actually have done the work to clarify their purpose and values? So many really haven't, but let's just say they have, and we've got our values operationalized into clear behaviors, and we have embedded practices and systems in our organization to have it be a lived experience. But you have leaders who are human beings, and they're bringing their own stuff and their own challenges and their own rivers and their own fears and their own self-care or lack thereof, etc. And now suddenly they fall away from leading in alignment with those values, or being deliberate about those practices, because they're in get shit done mode with their team, right? They're go, 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 go. And then they move to tasks and results and completion. And the stuff that seems quote unquote softer, like culture, like values, like some of these things are like, yeah. Like they take for granted that they're always going to be there. So anyway, that's just what was coming up for me, is I think that there's a lot of parallels, because if we take for granted any of these practices or any of these aspects that allow us to be whole and effective, we struggle unnecessarily. And it's like you're treading water. No pun intended with your river story.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm seeing more and more, when we think about resilience in the work context, in life context as well, but let's say work context, we have to think of it in a system type of way. There is the individual resilience, the team resilience, the organizational resilience. And so as we are working on increasing everyone's resilience, there needs to be action at all of these levels. We're seeing more and more organizations actually make investing in resilience, individual and team specifically, making it a KPI. so that it's not just about the numbers. So when, as a leader, you feel like putting your head down and just getting things done. Yeah. And I also, on my list of getting things done, I've got to pay attention to the psychological safety, the resilience of individuals and teams. And that's a way to keep it on the radar, because in the absence of this, it can go out the window.
I know years ago there's a book called The Resilient Organization, and I've done talks on that and stuff. So let's talk about that, because you talk about KPIs, which I love that. I love that there's organizations that are starting to do that and starting to put more of what once upon a time were soft skills, which, I hate that word, but, power skills, essential skills, some of these things, recognizing how they're actually critical and then forming KPIs around them. But when you talk about that, so you talk about resilience in terms of a strategic resilience plan. Let's talk about what should we be including in that, and what does it look like to have that we can maybe create a KPI to measure it and assess it.
Yeah. Well, I got there because I was working with professionals and leaders. And yes, so many having been in this overall narrative of, resilience is a soft skill type of thing. Yet they're experiencing what they're experiencing. They're coming to me to work on things so that their overall performance and success gets even better. And I found myself using this analogy of, okay, if we were in a pure business context and we have a fantastic new idea for a new product or new service, would we just say, hey, we've got this great idea, let's go implement it? Or would we say, we have this great new idea, let's look at who else is offering anything similar to this? How much are they charging for it? Who is paying it? How much are they willing to pay for it? Which force in the near or far future might impact the demand for this thing? We would do all this. We would do strategic thinking. So we need to do the same thing about your resilience. Great idea. It's not enough to just have this great idea and say, okay, I'll do the things to get more resilient. Most people are not going to do anything different, because that cookie cutter, just taking this recipe out from, we've heard from research is important, is still not going to make its way into our very busy, overflowing at times lives. So therefore, that's how I got to, so we need to actually use the same type of thinking we use in strategic planning in the business way for our own resilience. I simplified it as much as I could, because again, everyone I work with does not have a lot of time, but we need to get strategic about this. So what are your values? Because it needs to be customized for you. So your plan, Rosie, is going to be different from my plan, MH, although I feel that we may have some values in common, as it turns out. But still, it's going to be different for that reason. It's going to be different because our sources of supply of energy and demands are different, both between individuals, but even within ourselves. Today versus 3 months from now or 3 months ago is different. And then looking at our context, I actually walk people through in the book. And I got worksheets that people can actually use without the book or with the book. We'll have a link in the show notes if you want. But we're doing a SWOT analysis, looking at our strength and areas of challenge internally and externally as it relates to our resilience. Doesn't take as long as it sounds. They're actually very straightforward. And then you can get to a plan that is yours, actionable. And people will tell me, yes, they can actually implement it starting in the next 2 days.
I love it. So we got to be clear of our values, which I love. Like, that's the anchor of all the courage building and work we do. And so many people, they think, or they have a list of 10, and I'm like, you can't use that as a filter. Like, your brain can't hold on to that, right? It's like 2 or 3 typically, but do you also have them translate into behaviors? Like, I have a grid that literally is hanging by my computer that is, these are the behaviors that tell me I'm in alignment with my 2 core values. And these are the behaviors that tell me I'm out of alignment. And so I can do a quick ground myself of like, if I'm going to show up in alignment and integrity, I got to remember these things, right? So it's behaviorally focused to live my values of make a difference and growth. So I love that. So we're going to have our values and be clear about that. Then we're going to do an energy supply and demand audit. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So let's talk. Is it like, I kind of look like the energy sucks for vampires and energy givers? Is it kind of like that? Or what is that part of it?
Yes, it is like that. And it's taking time to actually dive into this a bit more, because especially high achievers, people who just have that desire to do really well, whether they're individual contributors, leaders, or would like to be in a leadership role down the road or a more senior one. I don't think everyone has to. We should be very happy as an individual contributor too. But a point is high performing. Uh, What we do is, because I say we, because I've been there, I am there sometimes, is we underestimate the demands we're facing and we overestimate the supply of energy we have. It's like a bit of an optimistic bias that, I mean, optimism is fabulous. It got us here. It's fantastic. It will in part take us there, but not fully. Because as things keep going, the demands are more numerous and they're larger as well. And the time to build supply is smaller. And what happens is literally, I'll ask people, what kinds of things bring you energy? And they say, oh, I love to go for walks a couple of evening a week after dinner. That's great. How many times did you go in the past 2 weeks? And then they look at me and they say, well, the past 2 months have been really busy. So no, but well, okay, doesn't go on the list, does it? So we dive in things like this to get actually a real good visibility on this situation. Because they do the same thing with demands. I'll ask you what kinds of demands you have. They'll list 2 or 3 things that they do not like at work. That's where they go. Then I say, okay, how about personal demands? Okay, same thing. Then they'll give me a few things they don't like in their personal life. And then I'll say, okay, go back to work. Demands that are positive, things you're really happy to have, but they're more demanding. Got a new role, expanding portfolio while someone else needs to be off. And then same thing in personal life. Just found a new place where you're moving to, love it, and very demanding, isn't it? So suddenly we have a more realistic read, not underestimating anymore. And that's extremely important because without this, the tendency will be to say, MH, I've got this. I am resilience.
I am resilient.
Right?
Okay, yeah.
Because they've done so much before. They've gone through things. Of course they have. You have, I have as well. But resilience, it is connected to some personality traits, like optimism. Actually, we know this from research. But in itself, it is something that will fluctuate during our lives. And therefore, we can influence if we see that we need to.
I love that you're looking at the demands from both a positive and a negative lens, because I do think as human beings, we are hardwired with a negativity bias. It's part of our survival instincts. We all know this, right? We're on high alert for threat, and it's way easier for people to list out things that aren't going well than it is. But so often, those are the ones that we view as stressors where we need resilience. We think, right, I'm going through it. If you think about the traditional definition of resilience, it's what being stronger or bouncing back in the face of adversity. So we tend to go to this, well, that if I'm doing a resilience plan, it's only got to be the bad stuff or the negative stuff. We don't think about it, but there's good stressors, bad stressors, whatever. But you're right. Like, you can have all these amazing things going on and they are a demand on your time and energy, even if they have a positive spin to it, they are demanding. So I love that, because I do think that's flipping the way we typically think, because we think we only need resilience when we're in times of challenge, despair, drain, crisis. We need more of that when we're in crises. But, we tend to think of that's when we need to find our resilience and, but we do need it more often than that, right? And we need to have like a base so that when we go into those challenging times, we know where we need to fluctuate or we need to adapt. Is that fair?
That's right. Yes, I call it sort of boosting your baseline, basically. So you're increasing where you're starting from. In a way, if it feels like right now that it's a really good time, great. Front load, bring it even higher for the times that will be more demanding. Because the other aspect of, and that's very much a word I'm using, the demands, as opposed to say adversity, exactly for this reason. And we want to keep in mind that demands are both acute demands, right? Tough moments, highly demanding times, all of this, and chronic demands. So things that are going on in our work in general, in our personal lives in general, in society, that are always there on our mind because it's always going on. And so all of these add up. And we, again, want to be realistic about that too.
Yeah, I love that. I love the boost your baseline too. There's an exercise that we do a lot with leaders and with teams that is, a lot of people do something like this, but we just call it ingredients to be your best. But we have people think about, when you're at your best, what does that look like? Like, what does it feel like? Like, describe yourself at your best. Like, I'm connected and I'm present and I'm aligned with my values and I'm patient and I'm curious and blah, 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 blah. And then I also say, like, if I looked at my context, I'm at my best when I'm not overscheduled, when I have breathing room in my calendar, when, I have time to exercise, all those things. And then we ask people to go, okay, so if this was a recipe, what ingredients do you need that would increase the likelihood that that version of you could show up? Like maybe you have to go to bed a certain time. You have to set boundaries. There's some conversations you need to have. There's some limits you need to set. There's some self-compassion practices, whatever it might be. And it is amazing to me, and you might experience this, MH, in your work, but almost every time we do this, I will ask people, when is the last time you thought about who you are at your best and what you need to be? And a lot of people will say this is the first time, like, ever. And even though they have self-care practices and all stuff, or they'll say it's the first time in a long time that they really haven't. And like, if people keep saying, show up as your best, give your best, or if we don't know what that is, it's really hard to manifest that.
So true. And I've also experienced this when I'm talking to groups and individuals about that topic as well. And often I'll also help the group realize, 'cause part of what I talk about is various research-based strategies like meditation, for example. And those that have a meditation practice, who end up meditating most days, will actually have a closer relationship with what it looks like when they're at their best, because it's part of the practice will often involve that self-awareness, right? That then connects you with, yeah, what does my best look like? And even for leaders, it increases their collective awareness, really having that sense of where the team is at, which we also need for the same reasons.
I love that. I love that. All right. So we got the energy supply and demand, and then we've got the context, the SWOT analysis of what else is going on. So I'm curious, going back to this idea of how often do you revisit this? Like, how often would somebody look at their resilience plan or recreate or revise their resilience plan?
It depends. And it's similar to, again, we can use that same analogy. If we were in a business context and we've created a strategic plan here in our full business exclusive context, when do we revisit it? Well, if the context changes, if we've reached these goals, if the variable have now been changed so much that the direction is different, right? Different things like this. So same thing here. Sometimes the context will be different because, I don't know, you're going to work in a different country for 3 months, different context, or you're going for extensive travel, or even just having a different version of your plan for when you travel for work. And then you get back to your usual version when you're here. But what will happen is at some point, the goals you had will be achieved. They will now be part of what your life looks like. And then you're ready for the next version of your plan. I actually had someone who, in the context of writing the book, was part of a focus group to test exactly these exercises. And we ended up talking again 3 months down the road for a different reason. She had invited me to do this workshop with her group of leaders. And she was there sitting at the back saying, oh, now it's for my group to experience. That's great. She comes to me after that workshop, that is now 3 months after she did her first plan, and says, MH, something fabulous happened. I realized I could actually do my second version of my plan because I've implemented it in the past 3 months as we thought I would. And I was ready for the next version. So it was exciting to celebrate that she had reached these goals in a way that was completely doable. She went from, I think her words were something like having a schedule that is out of control to including her life, to things being very different, and then was able to move on to her next goals as it related to resilience. So context changing, reaching her goals would be moments where we're creating new ones.
I love that, because I do think, you think about this, if we put this in I'm going to be stereotypical, but this still happens way more than ideally it would, is organizations have their strategic plan and they do all this work and then it sits on a shelf or it gets revisited once a year or it's whatever. Or we've even worked with organizations where they do all this work to, revitalize or clarify their purpose and values. And, we give them a plan of how they're going to keep it going. And then they kind of forget and it's, oops, here we go. Right. And they don't think about all of the different deliberate practices and touch points along the way, from how are you developing your leaders to what does your meeting hygiene look like, to this, to that. Like, how do you have this be a lived experience? So with this exercise, I love that you talk about with different seasons. I've gotten to the point now that I revisit it almost quarterly, because there's something natural about the seasons changing where I need something different in the winter. I mean, there's some things that always change, but like, as an example, working out, like females of a certain age, I'm just saying your body is different. And suddenly, like where I could work out first thing in the morning, my doctor's like, you're screwing up your cortisol, et cetera. You need to, have a buffer and do it this. So like even changing timing of eating and timing of workouts that used to be okay a year ago aren't okay anymore, right? And things like that. So it's like, it reminds me too, as we're doing any kind of developmental work on ourselves, because it's a lifelong journey. We're never done. Is, we get through one area and then it's like more opens up. Well, because we're very complex beings and it's like this growth journey is never done. That's why people go, oh, did I fail coaching because I got to come back? I'm like, no, everyone either needs a tune-up or you have a new life context or new life circumstance. And it doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. It's you're processing things differently and you have a different, so let's help you be a thought partner and work you through it. It's not because you failed. I don't know.
Yeah.
You failed your resilience plan, so now you got to do it again. No, it's not.
No, it's continuous improvement, really. Yes.
I love it. Okay, good. So we're going to have a resilience plan individually. So that we talked kind of about individually. What does that look like at a team level? Or how do we bring this idea of it's great to have our own individual resilient plan, but how do we do that at a team or even an organizational level?
Oh, yes. There, it connects a lot with what we've heard in terms of the psychological safety of teams and of organizations. Because this overall concept of psychological safety and ways to increase it is also connected with the resilience of the team, the ability of the team to go through the demands and come out even stronger, that growth and learning element. This is something I tackle in one of the later chapters in the book, because the book itself is more focused on the individual aspect of it in this overall system. But as leaders, often we actually don't even talk about it. We get stuff done, get our meeting agendas, 5 things we're going to talk about today, move on. And it is either an afterthought or it's not there at all. So sometimes what I'll say is, you know what, put it on the agenda. Just put team resilience on the agenda. Ask the team what it means. You can give it 5 minutes to start, but at least have it as part of the conversation. Even if your main message is to share with the team how important this is for you, that's a start. Now, if you're further along, you could look at what factors could you impact to increase that psychological safety and resilience of your teams. Often, teams are struggling with workload, they're struggling with growth and development and overall culture of the team. So how do we all think about working here? How does it feel to work here? And so investing in these areas is also a good place to reach. And because I love practical things, I'll also give a practical idea.
Yes.
Talk to the team about when is the next time our resilience will really be tapped. We know it will be. So we're a team that, I don't know, there's a year end for us. It's in March. We know it's a demanding time. November, it's always a demanding time. Or September it is. But for whatever industry you're in, most people can identify the next time it's going to feel this way. And most of the time, individuals and teams approach this period with a mentality of, we're just going to have to muscle through it the usual way. Just like go through, hope to come out, book a vacation at some point, probably get there sick. Like, okay, what can we plan differently this time? What can we do before? What can we do in the 2 months prior to increase our baseline as much as we can, individually and as a team? The team will have ideas. What can we do during it that might help us come out even stronger with a baseline that's actually higher than it has left us in previous years? And then what can we do after this moment? And what I would say, an example of something to look for, sometimes people will say, well, we could debrief, we could see what we can learn, do better next time. Yes, to all this. Also find an extra team, an extra person outside of this team, within your organization or outside actually, that you can thank. Because if you're doing this, now you're going into recognizing other people's contribution. And this is something that is healthy for most cultures, and we're building for the long term. So that could be an example.
I love practical examples because we're all about, let's take this from idea. And I love that because we do. You're right. There are so many times where, and I've been guilty of this. I mean, good Lord, right? You look at the calendar and we have our whole year kind of mapped out of key dates and stuff. And then when we do our quarterly offsites, we, look at what's the upcoming quarter. And while we also keep like the rest of the year or whatever. And it can be so easy to go, okay, this is going to be a really hectic client deliverable couple of months or hectic travel or hectic whatever. And then it's just like, right, plow down and you push through and you get to the end and you go, yay, woo, we got through. And that's like a celebration. And we've done that. And it's different to go, okay, that was like not sustainable. And so what can we learn from that is different this time around? And I love, like, even one of my clients, we're coaching a bunch of their executives, and there's a rollout that they're doing that's coming up. And so a couple of these executives, they know they're going to be on the road nonstop for, 6-week period and all of these things. But we've been having unknowingly, I mean, not with your plan, but very aligned, we've been having conversations leading up. Okay, this is coming. So what are the conversations you're having on the home front to make sure that you're all synced up and aligned, that this is a unique period of time, but you don't need to be dead at the end of this period of time. So, like, what are you needing to lead up to that? What conversations do you need to have? What do you need to do with your calendar? What are the different things you need to be ready? Who do you need to level up so that you can actually, like, if you're going to be on this traveling road show, to then expect that you're going to sit and be working till 11 o'clock at night answering emails, like, this is where you've got to level up your delegation abilities. You've got to level up your teams to be able to support you to go do this thing. And it makes a huge difference of being able to have that thoughtfulness. But I love the after too, because a lot of times we thank each other or we celebrate each other. But to go and that external, we know there's a ton of research on gratitude and what that does. So that's amazing. I love it.
Easily doable, but larger impact than the time it takes to do, really.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. Okay. We got the individual plan. We've got the team plan. I have there was something that I was like, oh my gosh, that we have to touch on that was in your book. How often do we hear somebody say, oh my gosh, you're my rock? Or, like, this person's the rock of the family or the rock of our team, or right. And we have those people we think about when we say someone's our rock. It's like they are someone that we lean on and always has our back. And it sounds nice in practice, but you talk about why we don't want to be somebody's rock. So tell me why. Tell me what's wrong with being a rock or having a rock or being someone else's rock.
And you're right. That's why it made its way into a book chapter, because I've heard it so much, and it is meant in a very positive way, right? So we don't want to be someone's rock. We don't want to call anyone else's our rock either, I would argue. And the main reason is, if we do that, it means we're almost thinking about resilience in a binary way. We're either a rock, and if we're not, we're a wreck over here at the end. And what that means is we're not paying attention to everything that's in between, which would give us signs that our resilience is affected. And plus, we're actually humans. So no, we're not this inanimated rock over here. We're humans. So even if we are strong, resilient, healthy, all of these beautiful things, we are still human and will be impacted. And so if we shift our perspective from, yeah, I'm a rock, to I'm someone who has lots of strengths and resilience and I need to keep investing in it, then we are in this involved position where we have agency on influencing our own resilience and that of others as well. So we need to let go of this sort of binary way of thinking about resilience, rock or wreck. No, we are human, anywhere in between. And that then means we have lots of room to play.
And let's be honest, like, we all have times where, like, our resilience plan probably goes out the window and we have these life crises and we're a pile of mush on the floor. And, like, guess what, right? And those are the times when we need someone to reach in, and we'd think, like, be our rock, but really it's more about be that support and be that light and be that, that's going to help us, get back up again. But if I could see, if you're constantly that for somebody else, then you talk about the demands or the drain. Even if you love that person, it's a constant drain on you, which then becomes unsustainable at some point as well, right?
That's right. Exactly.
And it's disempowering to the other person. Again, doesn't mean people can't fall apart and that we're not someone's support system. But I think I love the way you're framing it. It's different. It's not this binary. It's not, ooh, you're my rock, and then you're this, like, disenfranchised wreck, or vice versa. It's, look, I can be a wreck one day. I could be a rock one day. I could be somewhere in between. What I love about your approach is the more we're being deliberate about this on a day in, day out basis, then, we can find our way through even the really, really tough stuff. And, like, who do we lean on for support? But when do we also need to find our own agency, our own strength? Because it's also not fair for that person to put it all on them. for whatever that might be.
Yeah, exactly. Fully agree with what you're saying because yes, on one hand, resilience is relational. So yeah, we are supporting others and being supported by others that often, in fact, will be part of our resilience plan. So it's wonderful here. And these relationships also will find their way on our list of demands. Sometimes when we've done this exercise, I've had people kind of raise their hand and I go to them in the room while they're working on this particular part of their plan and they're saying, I'm caring for my partner who's dealing with this particular very important physical health treatment. Feels like a demand, but it doesn't feel like I can write it here because, it feels delicate. They don't want to look like they're considering it a demand. It is a demand. Just name it, recognize it as such. You want to do it. It's beautiful. And it's also a demand at the same time, which then puts you in a much more grounded position to really then assess what do you need to continue to be able to deliver on that support that right now you want to be delivering, given that you're a human with a limit. You cannot keep doing 100% of what you were doing and now add this. Something needs to shift.
Yeah, like if you're going to have a start doing list, you have to have a stop doing list, right? And so I think anyone that's ever been a parent, when you're a new parent, it's a different ballgame. Those of us that are caring for aging parents, it's a different ball, right? It's just, yeah, something's got to give. So we've talked about the plan and we've talked about kind of whether it's on the individual or the team and not looking at this binary of rock or wreck and in between. So one of the things that I also want to make sure we touch on, you talk about having a daily resilience workout, which I've never heard it in that context before. I mean, I do a ton of work on resiliency as well, but I've never thought of it that. And you talk about thinking like a project manager. And since I'm married to a project manager, I'm like, okay, this speaks to my heart. But like, what do you mean? I mean, I think about working out, like I'm gonna whatever your jam is. I lift weights all day long. Do some cardio here and there, do a good HIIT workout, whatever it is. But I don't think about a resilience workout. What is that? Say more.
Yes. Well, it's something that, because so many people are so busy, that at some point it needed to be shrunk to the smallest possible way of doing this. And it was basically a way to be able to identify what short actions will you take on a daily basis that will be part of your daily life, just like you choose to drink water, just like you choose to lift weights or whatever else. And some of these things are good also for your resilience anyway. But in a nutshell, it's a 1 minute at the beginning of the day where you say, okay, what am I going to do today? And when am I going to do it? For example, I will take 1 minute for 5 deep breaths before my lunch. Okay, that's your goal. And then you do your day. Hopefully you do it. At the end of your day, have you accomplished that goal? And what can you learn from it? And so if I have accomplished it, great. I've learned that I can make this happen. What happens often is you get to the end of your day and you're like, hey, I actually did not do that 1 minute that I was planning to do. What happened? And then you go back and you're realizing, I saw all these emails. I thought I should probably respond to a few before I do my meditation, but then I didn't have time, so I didn't do it. So what I'm learning is I've got to force myself to move away from the desktop or the computer so that I can actually make sure I do this. And then you keep going, keep learning the following day. But it's this 1 minute check-in, beginning, end of day with a clear, short, doable plan that then pushes us again to something you and I love, action.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you don't get into action, I'm going to say, like, if you keep stuff in your head and you have all the best plans and strategies in the world, if they don't translate into behaviors or actions, it doesn't do any good. And in all fairness, right, we have to do a lot of work I call it like to upgrade our faulty programming and clear the head trash so that we can get into action. I mean, so they do go hand in hand, but if you stay stuck up in the head and you don't get into action, it's not helpful. So I love it. And you know what it reminds me of is, and this is on not the 1 minute, but I love the idea of 1 minute because I think so many of us that are busy, we think, oh, I don't have time. And I know but I love the idea of that even short reflection of, looking back at the day, like what worked, what didn't, or what did I plan to do, what didn't I? Because for me, being a overachiever and, all of those things is not dissimilar to so many people. My calendar is my friend and my foe. Like, it is my best friend if I put everything in there and if I manage it well and I'm realistic about my capabilities and I've scheduled the right amount of prep time and I've honored my calendar, like I get through a day and get through a week and I feel like calm and clear and aligned and grounded and awesome. And when I've underestimated how much time things take, when I've let myself schedule over the buffer time or the no meeting time or the prep time or whatever it is, then all of a sudden I'm like, God dang it.
Yes, been there.
It is an ongoing struggle in my life. And so, right. And I have some days and weeks that I'm rocking it and some I'm like, God dang it. Like, anyway, but I like the idea of bringing it down to like the beginning of the day, looking at, okay, like what does my calendar look like and what's something I could do for 1 minute that will just whatever, ground me, recenter me, be part of that energy giving. That feels very tangible and very doable to me. So thank you for that gift.
Well, it is, I mean, there's many reasons why we love that going into action. But one of them is we do know from research that whenever we're in that technical term, active coping, we're increasing self-efficacy, right? That belief that we can influence things. And so even though you and I know this from our years of study and all this, yeah, but as human, still pushing ourselves to take that action still is something that needs to be aligned with what's doable for us, with our values. And that's where that sort of customized, personalized strategic plan makes a difference, because now it's not just a small action that is on a list of someone else. It's one that I've decided for my plan based on my values and my situation. And that makes it a bit more doable for most people.
I love that. I love that. Well, we could talk about this all day long, but I wanna make sure we get to some other key elements. So speaking of like the head trash and the mindset and the stuff that gets in our way, one of the things that I think MH is I'm obsessed with normalizing the messiness of being human, and that even you, with all of your wisdom and your knowledge and all the work you do, you're a human being, as you just said, and we all get in our own way. We all have this head trash that can hijack us from time to time. And so what I would love for you to share in the spirit of psychological safety, authenticity, vulnerability, and normalizing this human experience. MH, what is a self-limiting story that you still tell yourself sometimes? And when it shows up, how do you move beyond it so that you can still show up as a leader in your life?
As you were asking this question, what came to mind is something that sometimes I am successfully handling and sometimes not so much, is this idea that I can do things really fast. And I can do some things really fast, but no, not everything can be done in 10 minutes or in half an hour. Or so it's not helpful as a belief, seriously, to always think this. And I think some of that comes from experience, learning, seeing how unhelpful and how stressful it gets when you start thinking this way, and therefore piling too many things, and then not feeling as satisfied, or that you honor the time or even the joy of the experience because you're now time crunched and all these things. So yeah, this whole way of thinking is sometimes there for me. I think it's always there. I'm just managing it better at times than others. But what helps me manage it is learning. I think after now a few decades of doing this, I've gotten to a point where sometimes, more often than not, I would say, I'm able to catch it and say, no, that is not going to be as much fun. Then change it and have more of a realistic time assessment.
Oh my God. I am notorious for underestimating how much time things will take, for sure. But I do think there is something though about Kevin Cashman in his book, The Pause Principle, from like, I don't know if it's 10 years old now or more than that, maybe more than that now. But he talks about that, sometimes we have to slow down to speed back up. And I think it's so counterintuitive right now in our fast paced world that we think we just go, 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 go. And I'm guilty of this as well. And it's like, it feels so counterproductive and counterintuitive to slow down and kind of pause and take that breath. But that's where we can move forward with intention rather than reactivity. So I appreciate that, even though you teach this stuff, that you're human as well.
Yes, I am. Yes, absolutely.
I love it. I love it. All right. Are you ready for quick questions?
Go for it.
Okay. Fill in the blank. Living authentically is?
Richer.
It is. Contemplative one. I like that. When the world is presenting an opening, but you don't feel like showing up as a leader, what do you do?
Try it.
Nice. I like it. Besides, I know you're into mountaineering, but what is something that people would be surprised to know about you?
Ran a marathon.
Which one?
Montreal. Many years ago. Only one. So one PhD, one child, one marathon, one book. that I'm a one big project type of gal.
You're like one and done, baby. I love it. All right. This may not be a one and done. I don't know. We'll see. But what is your favorite go-to movie?
The one that came to mind was Forrest Gump, actually. Yeah.
Life is like a box of chocolates. Never know what you're going to get. Well, you need a resilience plan. See? There you go.
See?
All right. What's your go-to song?
Probably Beautiful Day by U2.
That's a good one. I like that one. What is something you can't live without?
My running shoes. Although I'm not a runner anymore, I'm a speed walker because knee situation, but you still wear running shoes if you're walking really fast. So running shoes.
Got it. And what is something in your ordinary daily life that makes your heart happy?
I like the wind, the movement, the sound, what it creates. I like the wind. And I love the wind in mountains. Oh my God. You're in a mountain and it's not windy right here, right now, but you hear it come through the mountains. It's a magical moment. I love it.
I've never had someone ask that. But I'm like, I like that. I don't like it when it's blowing me over, like when it's 40-mile-an-hour gusts.
And your hair is perfect. And now it's not. No, agree.
My hair is never perfect. I gave up on that a long time ago.
Yeah, no, agree. But you tried.
You just like, dang it, I just combed it. All right. And what are you grateful for right now?
Grateful for health. The health of people around me, mine as well, but health, all of it, the health. Physical, mental, spiritual, financial, just the health. Something to be grateful for. Yeah.
Love that. Love that. Well, one closing question, MH. I could talk to you for a long time, but for today, if you could challenge leaders everywhere to practice this one behavior that would create more human workplaces and equip everyone to show up as a leader, what would that be?
I would say be curious about resilient moments and identify them, say them, talk about them, name them, so that you see them and others see them as well. So we pay even more attention to the importance of investing strategically in our resilience.
I love that. I mean, that's, right? Leaders, formal leaders set the tone for psychological safety for their team. So I love that. Well, this has been such a delight. Thank you for making this abstract concept of resilience so often very tangible, very tactical, very actionable. I know I'm taking away some nuggets for myself as well. So just thank you. This has been such a delight.
Thank you. A delight for me as well, Rosie. Thank you.
I'm Rosie Ward, and this is Show Up as a Leader. To learn more, head over to PeopleForwardNetwork.com and, of course, hit that follow button.